both surprised by the way we looked. The years had changed us too. We smiled and both embraced like old friends often do.
Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Gung Ho. It's still January 29, 2020. I'm doing the second episode today with my friend Chris Grillo, and we're going through things that have happened over 50 years, I guess, or more than 50 years.
Yes.
And I have a feeling we're not going to be able to talk about everything, but he said he'll come back and we'll just continue. This
Okay.
is episode 2 with
Okay.
my friend. So we were talking, I mean, it's very serious stuff about you don't forget. And you're absolutely right. You know, there's things you can't forget. And some people have said to me on occasion, it's over, get over it, move on. You can't do that. Huh?
I don't know about that. I told you I think I made the right decision at the time that I talked about, where I turned down OCS and possibly going to, or more very likely going to Vietnam as an infantry lieutenant, second lieutenant. But to think that you can walk away from an experience of war, I don't know about that.
No, you can't.
I don't.
You
I
can't
wonder
walk
about all
away.
those men coming back from Afghanistan and Pakistan and what they saw and what they've seen.
Well, see,
The ones that don't have post-traumatic stress, to me, would be the exception. Probably takes a special person to somehow compartmentalize what they saw and lived. And, you know, some people function better under stress than others, but not knowing and not remembering, no how.
I was okay, you know, in combat. I was fine. There were times when I was terrified. Well, I think I was on a verge of going insane. But that was when we were caught and in a barrage of artillery and rockets, and there's nothing you could do. It's just all luck, whether you're going to get survive or get hit. In that kind of situation, that's terror. That's terror. And but being in combat, I was okay with that. I did what I had to do.
Well, see, I've never been in combat, fortunately, but part of me thinks that the combat situation is where your adrenaline kicks in, and your competitiveness and your fitness as an athlete, and also the Marine Corps training kicked in, which is what they hope for. It's before and after, I think, that's more problematic, because you know, in the moment, you're going to want to find a way to live, and if that means attacking another soldier from a different country, the Viet Cong, whoever it may be, I would think you'd respond in a way to preserve your life. But later on, especially if some of your men didn't make it, that I think is the part that lingers.
Yeah, I have all of those experiences, but we did. I mean, almost all the time, I did what I was told to do. There were occasions that I didn't want to do it, and I told my commanding officer that I don't want to do this. This is not right. This is too dangerous. They didn't want to hear it, and I was only thinking about my men. I mean, I even one time told the company commander that, but I had my platoon out the day before. It's not our time to go out again. Just like, you're going out, Lieutenant. That's it.
And that's it.
That's it. All right. So, boy, oh boy. I don't know if you know this, but I actually tried a case in Vietnam. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah. It's a long story, but crazy story. I'm out in the field with my platoon, and we had moved into this village, and we would dig holes. We wouldn't go into their homes, but I went into a pagoda and I made that my headquarters. And during the evening, out of nowhere, this captain walks in. I mean, and I didn't hear the helicopter come in, or anything. Captain comes in dressed, I mean, really clean, pressed utilities, boots shine. He's carrying a Thompson submachine gun. So what the fuck? And he's looking for the lieutenant, me. And he finds me. And as he's approaching me, he saw that there was a young boy kneeling down on the cement floor. He didn't know why at the time. Came over to me. Are you Lieutenant Giannini? Yes. Well, this is for you. And he handed me a copy of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Hard copy.
Okay.
Sir, why? You've been appointed or assigned to defend this Marine at a court-martial.
Ah, okay.
And I said, but I'm not a lawyer. He said, he's not entitled to a lawyer. He's entitled to an officer. I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but they actually convened the court-martial in a combat zone, in a Catholic church with the whole roof was gone. We did the court-martial. I had to defend this Marine. And the prosecutor was like me and you. Like, you know, you're the prosecutor, and that's it. And you're the defense lawyer, that's it. So we did it. I lost the case. It was a slam dunk, but I won on mitigating circumstances, what character evidence. He got convicted, but he got a light sentence, and then it was reduced. But he was facing 7 years in a bad conduct discharge. That's fucking serious.
Right.
Anyhow, I'm surprised I never told you that. That was an experience. I was really upset.
So I had, you know, in terms of the way my life went as compared to yours. So when I got to Korea, I was originally in charge of processing hardship discharges as a company clerk, a headquarters company. And a month or two after I got there, an opening developed at the local servicemen's club. And I applied and got the job, so I ran the service club. It's not a drinking place, but we had TVs and music and library and ping pong tables, pool tables, a place for the guys to hang out during the day. Not wild and crazy at all. But we used to have court-martials in our building all the time.
Were you close to the DMZ?
We were about 10 miles from the DMZ, yes.
Did you have to go up there?
No. When the Pueblo, which was a naval ship, was seized in North Korean waters, it was a spy ship, and we all got put on full alert. Everybody went north towards the DMZ, but not the headquarters unit. We went south.
No.
We went away from any
So
combat.
you're running a service club,
Yes. And
I
we're having the
assume-
court-martials are there, and so I watched them.
and so you had a room.
Wait, let me just say this. Military justice, boy, that's an interesting combination of words that don't really mesh. The military and justice don't normally go together, not in what I've learned about justice since then.
Well, they should have never convened this court-martial.
Right.
That you know. it was-
Especially in a combat
You know,
zone.
I think sometimes they want to make an example, but the Marine that they picked out on this occasion, you know, he was a very brave Marine. He already had been awarded a Bronze Star. Was up for another one, and I knew he was brave because I saw him do things he should have never lived. This guy, he should have never lived. He was running an LZ on a hill. He was bringing choppers in. The LZ was so small, one chopper at a time. He was out there. NVA, every time a helicopter came in, artillery barrage, rockets, he was out there going like this, bringing them in,
Right.
and supervising loading and off. I saw him doing it. He was like, it's like maybe 30 meters away, not even 100 feet
It
away
would seem
from
like
me.
it would take a fearless mentality.
Excuse me?
A fearless mentality.
I'm telling you, he's lucky, because people coming off that chopper were killed. I saw it. And then one day he just left. He went AWOL. And that's what they went after him. And then he assaulted an officer, they said. But I saw all of this, and that came out during the trial. I mean, what the hell you doing? But anyhow, I was in the Marine Corps back stateside for about a year and a half, and I had to make a decision, and I said, there is no way. I know what they'll do with me. I'm going right back to Nam. I'm going to get a rifle company. I'll never make another year. That was in my head. I can't survive another year of this. It's crazy. So I got out. And I decided that I don't want to be just a run-of-the-mill guy, college grad. I want to do something more. And I wound up in law school. And
So I got out in '68. In the fall of 1968, I got out of the Army. And I think you were already out by then.
no, I didn't get out until '69.
Okay. So
December.
we started seeing each other by when you got out, and at some point in time you got married. And after I got out, I went to work for IBM in their data processing department. It was a really good job with a great career, but totally boring. And since I hadn't finished college, I decided to go back to school and get my degree, and I did. And I graduated from LIU in 1970.
I was in law school in 1970.
So we were hanging out back then. And while we were hanging out, I used to see you all the time, my recollection is. And at some point in time, you introduced me to Camille, who has been my wife since 1972.
But didn't you meet Camille before you went overseas?
No, I met Camille in 1970.
She was.
Trust me on this.
Okay.
Okay, and we would double date all the time, and sometimes we would stay at your bungalow in Gerritsen Beach, and a couple of times when I was working trying to save money because I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't want to be just a guy with a degree because now I had a degree, and I was, I'd done pretty well in school when I went back. So I went to law school with you a couple of times for different classes, and after the third or fourth class, I said, I can do this too. And then I applied and I got admitted to law school, and then they said, look, we can take you now, take you a year from now. And I needed to save some money so I could pay for law school because my family couldn't afford it. So I worked for a year at your uncle's carpet store, your cousin's carpet store.
Gene Giannini.
Jimmy and
Gene, yeah.
yeah, Jimmy and his brother. And like I said, watching you do it, I saw how hard you worked, but I said, well, I know, and I knew you from college, so I knew you were a hard worker anyway. And I said, oh, I could see this. So to get through law school, I have to work as hard as he's working. Okay, am I ready for that commitment? Yes. It took me a while to figure that out and come to that decision because we both know how hard it is to go to law school. But once I made up my mind and I was able to save enough money to do it, that's what led me to law school and ultimately to the Brooklyn DA's office. My first job out of law school in 1975.
All right, so I'm a little bit ahead of you.
Yes.
I got out of law school in '73. I got a job with the Legal Aid Society Criminal Defense Division, and by '75 I was out in private practice. But we overlapped one another. You're at the DA's office, and I'm practicing out of Brooklyn.
Yes, I was in the Brooklyn DA's office from 1975 to the latter part of 1980 or 1981.
And you wound up in the Homicide Bureau.
Homicide was an elite bureau at that time. It was only by invitation. You couldn't get there if you wanted to. And the way it worked, as I learned once I got there, was the people, see, when we were in homicide, we had to be on call 24 hours a day. And there were 12 or 13 of us. That means every 12 or 13 days, weekday, weekend, we had to be on call. So there was a lot of interplay between us all. We had to rely on one another. So the head of the homicide at that time allowed us to recommend who should come next. Number one, he thought we would know who's coming up, who had the experience and the skill. And number two, who would be a team player, who would, if a homicide occurred at midnight, I'd have to go. If it occurred at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, you know, my shift was over at 6. Sometimes they'd say, call me back at 5:30, and I can not get up and, you know, in the middle of the winter and go do it. So there was a lot of cooperation amongst us,
Was
sharing the workload.
Was Ron Aiello leading the head of the bureau at that
He was the
time?
head of homicide the time I was there during that period, yes. And Marty Fahey was the assistant. And Bruce Cutler was the star.
And all right, continue about how you would follow through on a homicide case.
Well, as I said, the first couple of years, you start out in on the Skirmihorn handling misdemeanors and preliminary hearings for cases that hadn't been indicted. Then you go to grand jury, do indictments. Then you go to felonies. I didn't go to felonies. I was sent directly to a specialized unit, narcotics. I hated it. And Arnold Taub was a supervisor on narcotics, and after a week I went to see him and I said, look, I want to get out of here. What do I have to do? He said, you have to try 3 cases and win them. I said, okay, will you help me? He said, sure, I'll help you. Great guy, Arnold Taub.
Who was this?
Arnold Taub. He was the head of narcotics at the time.
I remember the name.
Okay. He was a great guy and very good mentor for me, and he respected that I didn't think it made sense to use our resources on street buys, because all the heavy-duty drugs went to Sterling Johnson in Manhattan. He was the drug prosecutor, so we didn't get any big cases, really. And I didn't really, you know, we were doing Quaalude cases. And I didn't use Quaaludes, but they were a common drug amongst my peers. So it was awkward. And they would want us to do marijuana cases, and none of us wanted to do them either. We just didn't feel like that was an appropriate use of resources. So anyway, so I tried 3 cases, I won them, and he agreed to send me to Supreme Court back to felonies, which was not even a lateral move. But after I was in felonies for about 6 months, 8 months, I got a call from Ronnie. Some of the people who had been there ahead of me said Chris would be the right guy. So I got a call, I went up there, and when you get the call from Ronnie, you're in. So I went up there and I went into homicide. So the way homicide worked was, as I said, if a homicide occurred in Brooklyn, no arrest could be made by New York City Police Department without our okay, about the DA's office okay. We didn't want them making arrests and leaving us with a crummy case. So we had that working relationship, which was a good deal for us because we dealt with only homicide detectives who were very experienced and by and large the best. A really enlightening experience for me. I didn't have any police officers in my family, but these homicide guys were super. They were so smart.
I have to put an asterisk.
Okay, I'm just telling you my experience. So let's say, you know, it's 8 o'clock at night and there's a homicide. Somebody gets killed outside a bodega, or husband and wife fight each other and somebody gets killed, or any number of things that resulted in a homicide. We would get a call from homicide, a homicide detective or a homicide bureau, and say, a murder occurred, we've made an arrest or we're looking for somebody, and they'd say, okay, they would give us a heads up to be aware. Okay, don't go to the opera, don't go to a play, you know, you're gonna get called later. So ultimately we would get a call at some point that they had made an arrest, or sometimes they wanted us to come and do search warrants for them. Sometimes you go to the crime scene, the blood would still be on the floor. And we would interview witnesses, and when there was somebody who had been arrested, we would take sworn statements from them in front of we would bring with us a videographer and a court reporter. So everything we did with the defendant or the accused would be recorded and visual, and with a clock behind us to make sure it was clear how much time everything took. So that's what would happen. And if we determined that an arrest was appropriate, sometimes we'd conduct a lineup. I carried big cards numbered 1 through 6, so I could give people if we wanted to do a lineup, and the police would go find some kids in a park to stand in a lineup. So we did, like I said, lineups, search warrants, everything else that needed to be done. If we authorized an arrest, and usually I would call somebody, one of my superiors, if there was a doubt. But after a while, you didn't need to do that. You knew what was good and what wasn't. And we'd be off the next day because you'd be out all night. And then the following day, we'd meet in the morning with the boss and talk about what the charge should be, and we'd go to the grand jury and indict somebody.
You know, you don't know this, but when I went out in private practice, I started taking on murder cases, and I had a good relationship with the head of the homicide bureau, Ron Aiello. I could call
Okay.
him up and talk to him, whatever. I always liked him. And of course, he became a Supreme Court judge. And he was the type of judge that he could get any case he wanted. He was that powerful.
Okay.
And it turned out that he was a really good judge, one of the best, I thought. How's that? Really?
I
but-
can't say I'm surprised or not, because the qualities it takes to be a judge are not the same as the qualities it takes to be a homicide boss. So you wouldn't see those things necessarily. He certainly was knowledgeable about homicide and what was likely to result in a conviction, what the quality of evidence would be, and the rules of evidence. He was knowledgeable about all that. There was no question.
Yeah. But
He
I
was
thought
a knowledgeable guy.
he was the type of judge that, you had to be prepared.
Yes.
But with me, he was hard. It didn't matter whether it was the prosecutor or defense. You had to have you had to be ready to go to trial, and you had to do it and do it right. I thought that was fair.
Well, that wouldn't surprise me at all because he insisted on that from us when we worked for him in the Homicide Bureau. So I would think he'd expect that from everybody because he was used to demanding that from the prosecutors, and I would think he'd hold defense lawyers to the same standard. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
Well, last time I saw him was not too long ago, and he told me that he had just, I think, had an operation for stomach cancer. And then he died, I think, shortly thereafter. We had a long time relationship, a good relationship. In fact, this is crazy, but every murder case I tried in front of him, I got an acquittal.
Well, good for you. I'm not sure he's the result of that, but he probably ran a tight ship in terms of the rules of evidence and
but
demeanor.
even I did a murder involving a police officer, and I got an acquittal. And at the time of sentencing, he told my client, "You got away with murder." And something, I wasn't offended, because I knew that it was high profile, that he basically had to say that. I wasn't offended. The guy was acquitted. You got away with murder. But
If I may, Joe, when I went to law school and when I got out of law school, I wanted to be a trial lawyer, but I did not want to do criminal cases. But I was convinced that the best way to do trials is to be a prosecutor or a public defender or a legal aid, because they do all the trials. If you go into a civil firm, they'll never let you try anything. So, despite not wanting to be a criminal lawyer, I am still a criminal lawyer now, some 40 years later, and I still do a lot of first-degree murders and other murders. And even though I didn't want to pick that path for myself, it turned out to be a life path for me.
yeah,
I'm still doing them now.
with Ron Aiello, a few years later, I was walking down Court Street, and he was walking with some of his other judges. And I stopped to say hello to him, and he said to me, that verdict was right.
Really?
Yeah. That verdict, he said.
Well, that was a compliment to you on some levels, of course. But he told the guy he got away with murder, and he okayed. He felt it was okay.
I felt that he was compelled to make a harsh statement.
Well, Joe, when he was the head of homicide, he had a lot of contact with the police department, and not just the homicide detectives that his assistants worked for, higher ups. He knew everybody and was respected by everybody. So handling a homicide of a police officer had to be challenging for him. Because of course, like in life, there's some good and some bad in everything.
It was really a very high-profile case. It was in the papers a lot. The officer that was killed, his wife was pregnant, and they were trying to bring back the death penalty based on this case. They claimed that these officers were, involved in the crack war, but it wasn't what it really seemed to be by a long shot. So
But he had to have some angst about the murder of a police officer. We worked as,
Well,
as prosecutors, we worked
you
with
know-
them every day. And most of them were honorable,
Well,
hardworking people.
he probably did, but as the case went on, I think he got a sense that, you know,
Something was up.
this wasn't right, and I'm just a lawyer, like to go there, and I did. We're just about out of time again. One interesting thing about this murder case, I was, you know, early on, I came, you know, I was raised, I was born in Brooklyn, and my early years was in Canarsie, and the Lucchese crime family controlled that area and some other areas. And when I went into private practice, they were calling me already. I knew a lot of them already. And anyhow, one of them, high up in the Lucchese family, out with dinner one night, and he was saying to me, said to me, "What that, you know, that cop killing case? What are they telling you?" I said, "They're saying my client killed this cop and tried to kill his partner." He said, "That's not what happened." He says, "What you have is 4 off-duty cops that are dirty." And I said, "How do you know that?"
What year was this?
4 off-duty cops,
No, I heard you. What year was this?
89.
Okay.
They were off-duty and they were dirty. Think about that when you go through your discovery. And how do you know that? He said, "I got it from the horse's mouth." I said, "Oh, come on." He said, "I got it from detectives working on the case. Ippolito and Capoletto, they got in serious
No, that's
trouble."
not, Ippolito is one, not
Yeah.
Capoletto's not the other one. Something like that.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Yes.
Line, 'cause friends are friends for all time.